Does mediocrity serve us well or harm us? Observing a tale with a familiar theme is quite engaging. I was catching up on the latest broadcasts when my spouse arrived home tardily from her occupation. Guess what? You'll never guess who recruited me for defense today, David Bridges, I announced. Really? How'd you find out? She probed. You were featured on the news, I said, gesturing toward the television mounted on the wall. She looked at the screen, and indeed, there she was. Naturally, it was an outdated picture, likely sourced from the firm's online profile. Yet there she stood, the freshest addition to David Bridges' defense ensemble. This revelation didn't shock me before I persuaded her to cut down her 100-hour work weeks. She was already a leading defense lawyer for celebrities. It's not that I'm an archaic man against my spouse's career. I simply longed for her presence more than a monthly occurrence. That was 2 years back when she represented a senator implicated in an AIDS murder. I was certain of his guilt, and I felt she harbored doubts about his innocence. Yet she didn't let that stop her from delving deep into the evidence over an extended period, seeking any sliver of data that might turn useful. Ultimately, she swayed the jury to exonerate the man. The prosecutor chose not to pursue further charges, leaving the country in disbelief. During those tumultuous 3 days, as I dozed in her office, I handed her the divorce papers. She later questioned how she could avoid losing me. I proposed she step down from her role. At this point in our 30s, we had amassed more wealth than we could expend a portion derived from our clientele, but my earnings as a radio talk show host were significant too. My political talk show is syndicated, ranking in the top 10 nationally and leading in various markets. She agreed to reduce her consulting hours and consented to initiate a family with me. Holding our son Mikey, I watched as she took note of the hosts debating her client's chances of escaping justice. I loathed that term. Getting away with it, her loyalty was never in question. Her reputation was too precious for her to risk it through infidelity. My worry was her tendency to overwork. You might have noticed I didn't say her love for me was too great to cheat. I didn't entertain that notion. Oh, I'm convinced she loves me, but her passion for her career surpasses all. Transitioning to consulting, she quickly became a sought-after figure on TV talk shows for her legal acumen. She was on air almost every day, and she reveled in it. Are you bothered? She queried as the ads rolled in. What do you think? I responded with a laugh. Mikey needs a new diaper. I took my boy to his room, leaving her to ponder my reaction, which I preferred. I savored the moments of keeping her guessing. She's a stickler for perfection, and I found joy in the occasional disruption of her routine. She followed me, and as I changed Mikey, she commented, "It's not going to be like before." "I'm just a part of the crew, not the head," I nonchalantly responded. "There you go, kiddo." Nice and clean. Mikey's laughter at my tickles made me grin. I made silly noises on his plump tummy, eliciting more chuckles. "Listen, it's merely a tax dodge case. They need me for jury selection," I explained as I returned to the living area, bypassing her. "You're making too much of it," she retorted. "I disagree," I said petulantly. "This is significant for us, simply for the association with the name," I remarked, settling Mikey into his play area. "What, Alicia? This is advantageous for you. I'm worried this might spell the end for us," she exclaimed. I shook my head, grabbed my keys from the holder. Dinner's in the oven, staying warm, and I'm off to the pub. David Bridges, once our state's governor, faced a barrage of criticism upon announcing his presidential bid. Allegations surfaced of undeclared tax returns in the millions from an overseas firm and various accusations of election tampering during his tenure as governor. The legal drama promised to be captivating. I just preferred my wife not be entangled in it. In the quiet corner of an upscale cigar lounge near my studio, I sparked up a Davidoff Churchill. Other patrons were present, but we all respected the unspoken rule of privacy, unless an invitation to converse was extended. Despite my status as a public figure, my frequent presence had rendered the sight of Boyd Barker, the radio host, quite ordinary. "Boyd, feel free to take some of my scotch," offered a familiar face, whose name escaped me. "Thanks," I acknowledged with a nod, helping myself to a generous pour from his decanter. "Saw the news. Figured you'd need a stiff one," he commented. "You're not wrong," I agreed, toasting to his insight before retreating to a remote spot in the lounge. He inhaled deeply from his cigar, exhaling with deliberation. A moment of self-reflection made me wonder if I'd been too hasty, but I quickly dismissed the thought. The divorce I had filed was a result of her excessive dedication to high-profile cases, and our reconciliation hinged on her promise to quit. I harbored no guilt for setting such terms. She had a successful decade-long career, and I was eager for us to start a family while possible. Yet she accepted another major case without my input, a move that felt like a slap in the face. I might have agreed had she asked, but the lack of consultation stung. I still desired a say in our choices. My gaze drifted to the TV across the room, where Alicia was being interviewed, radiant as ever. A photo in the background, taken in our own living room, caught my eye. I half hoped Mikey would burst into tears upon seeing her. She navigated the questions with finesse, giving the illusion of transparency while revealing very little. A master at manipulation. Then a golf buddy and show host asked, "Will your husband file for divorce again?" Alicia's surprise was evident. "Well, the divorce was halted on the premise of you leaving court cases behind. This seems to contradict that," he pointed out. I texted him, "You've earned a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle for that one. My husband fully endorses my professional decisions," she claimed eagerly on air, and I found myself smiling. "No, I don't," I stated out loud, but prompting knowing laughter from those aware of our marriage. My phone rang shortly after. "Boyd, Dana Collins from the Times here. May I inquire about your wife's breach of agreement?" "Hey Dana, it's been a while. Let's do lunch soon, perhaps another feature on my show," I offered, deflecting her query. "Will you answer my question?" she pressed. "No, but here's my statement," I began. "I'm utterly surprised this will probably be your headline. Need, dumb. More details. She hasn't yet done anything to rekindle old issues. We're deeply in love. Thanks," I wrapped up. "Catch up soon, Dana. You're a bright spot in journalism." I've had her on the show to support her boss. We keep a symbiotic relationship with him, I mentioned. After another call, I switched off my phone to avoid the relentless media of which I, ironically, am a part. "It won't be the same," Alicia observed as I entered our bedroom. She was breathtaking in a long black satin nightgown with a revealing thigh-high slit and lace that scarcely concealed her. Clearly it wasn't meant for sleep. "Whether it happens or not," I said, trying to divert my eyes, "you know the stakes. Things have shifted. We now have Mikey," I added with a laugh. "If you believe having a son will stop me from wanting a wife who puts our family first, you're wrong. Fall back into old patterns, and you'll find yourself alone." "Sweetheart, we've gone too far already. I don't wish to fight, Alicia. The time for discussion was before you took the job. Now, we're in the aftermath. It'll all work out for us. Just wait and see. Now, let's get some sleep. I wanted to show you how deeply I love you." I expected her to be furious the next morning after seeing my comments in the Times, but I seized the opportunity to enjoy the company of my beautiful wife while I could. She knelt before me, and within minutes we were entangled in passion on the bed. I satisfied her completely, as I always do. "You were amazing, it was extraordinary," she whispered, barely managing to express her love before succumbing to sleep. I was left wondering about her reaction come morning. "Damn you," she screamed as I walked into the kitchen the next day. Surprised, I tried to interrupt, but she continued, "You had no right to share that," her anger palpable. I just shrugged. "It's out there now, it'll be the day's talk." "Boyd," I said with a laugh, "for once they're not fixated on your client." Her client had dominated the headlines for weeks, pre- and post-indictment. I pecked her cheek and decided to grab my coffee and breakfast en route to work, sidestepping her anger. I pondered when she would return to her grueling 16-hour workdays. "We're not done with this discussion," she called out as I left. I arrived at my studio, a hive of activity. My team, including a diligent intern managing calls, a sound engineer, an adjustment technician, and a producer, all worked in sync with me. Preferring to do my own research, I do not employ a team to filter news for me like other hosts do. "Boyd, the phones have been off the hook today," the intern said as I handed her coffee. "Turn off the ringer, Missy. Let it go to voicemail. Filter the important ones for me to call back," I instructed. "Thanks, boss. That's a relief," she replied gratefully. Entering my office, I found the producer already there. "Good morning," Boyd, Rose greeted. "How are you today?" "Absolutely wonderful, Rosie." "What's the plan?" I asked. "It's hard to avoid the Bridges scandal, especially with your involvement," she noted. "It's my wife who's involved, not me," I clarified. "Dana Collins will be on today's show. We'll talk about it. I'll let her guide some of my responses, but she should understand this isn't an interview." "I saw her article today. Seems she's got a thing for. Your wife, Rose teased. No, she's smitten with me, I corrected her, recalling a past conversation I had used to my advantage. Don't toy with her, Boyd. I thought she'd be chewed up by this city years ago. Never doubt a farmer's daughter, she's resilient, I said. All right, I'll set up a call with her and maybe get Dan on too. I owe him for backing my wife on air last night. It's good to have allies, right? Absolutely, I agreed. Okay, Boyd, you're living 5, 4, 3, 2 rows counted down and the on-air light. Illuminated. Good afternoon, listeners. This is your ever-charming host, Boyd Baxter, with Dana Collins from The Times in the studio. Welcome, Dana. Hi, Boyd. Happy to be here, especially with the buzz about your wife, she said with a sly smirk. I shook my head as she sat down, skirt riding up to reveal her legs clad in black nylon stockings. I've always admired the elegance of beautiful legs, especially when wrapped in black nylon, I remarked. I knew you'd appreciate that, she responded. Yes, my wife has joined David Bridges' defense as a jury consultant, Dana probed with a hint of skepticism. Is that what she's told you? I met her gaze firmly. She dangled her shoe off her foot, a playful smile on her lips. It seems your wife hasn't told you everything. My contacts in the Bridges camp say she's the new face of their legal defense, set to lead at the table. I don't give credence to unnamed sources. I never rely on them, I retorted dismissively. She chuckled. But you use the stories from people like me for your show, she pointed out. Well, I shot back, feeling the heat of the moment. I've never positioned myself as a journalist, I clarified. I simply host a show where I offer my perspective on the day's happenings. She smirked and threw in the latest news, your wife has secretly come back to work and misled you. Let's go to the callers, I interjected swiftly, hoping to dodge further complications. I found the conversation slipping from my control. Blast, let's take the first caller, I resolved. I addressed the audience, making an effort not to be distracted by Dana as she uncrossed her legs. I haven't misled you, I'm just serving as a jury consultant. My wife clarified over the phone defensively. Is that my beloved Felicia? Hey honey, I'll make it back in time for dinner. We're having roast pork tonight, Dana interjected playfully. Hello, Mrs. Baxter, you know my last name is Taylor, my wife corrected. Her professional identity was established and known by her maiden name, which she kept when we wed. Indeed, Dana conceded, Mrs. Taylor. Besides, Alicia went on, stop making up stories. I'm just part of the defense team for jury consultancy. That's accurate, Dana acknowledged. Enough now, ladies. Alicia will talk at home. Next caller. Please, that was a complete fiasco, I sighed after the show ended. I think it went rather well, Dana observed, slipping her shoes back on. She had flirted with me by taking them off during the show. You owe me one, I grumbled. She chuckled. How about dinner as recompense? Skip the pork. Roast. Her look unnerved me. I was aware of her affection, but it felt like a lure, and her the eager predator. Some other time, Dana. Take care, I made my exit hastily to avoid making a regrettable dinner commitment with the alluring redhead. Once home, I prepped the roast, massaging it with oil and spices before sliding it into the oven. 30 minutes later, as the roast cooked, I fed Mikey and popped open a beer. The quandary of whom to trust, my wife or Dana with her anonymous tip, was maddening. After 3 hours, the table set and a chilled Chardonnay in the ice bucket awaited. The roast, now perfectly done, was set aside to slice. Alicia was still not home, just 30 minutes behind schedule. As I nibbled on my salad, glancing at the clock, she was now an hour late without a call or text. I kept the roast warm in the oven, now an hour and a half late, and mixed myself a martini. I resisted calling her. I had to be on top in the impending confrontation. 2.5 hours late, I turned off the oven and went out to eat. 3 minutes after I started on my steak, a text arrived. Where are you? I ignored the call, sighed, and returned to my impeccably grilled steak. The high-heat sear of a steak brings me profound satisfaction. I wouldn't let her ruin that. 5 minutes later, another text landed, just a question mark. I indulged in the creamed spinach, savoring the burst of taste. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. I sent it straight to voicemail, knowing it would annoy her when people did that. I felt victorious in a skirmish she wasn't even aware of. Finishing my steak, draining my wine, and scraping the last spinach from the plate, I dismissed the third call. At 9:30, I drove into our garage. She was waiting at the doorway, arms folded. I assumed she was angry and tried to look concerned. "Where have you been?" Ignoring my call, she demanded. I gave a light laugh. "You know the answer," I said. "Did you even think to check the oven for the roast?" Entering the kitchen, I saw the roast still in the oven. "You didn't eat. What did you have at work then?" "Pizza." "Take out, listen. It won't always be like this," I answered. "What's important is you knew I was making dinner and you didn't call to say you'd be late from work." "Apologies, you're aware of the routine." When she halted, I responded, "Indeed, I am aware. As a result, I am initiating a divorce." "Recall, you consistently overlook that." "You possess a spouse at home currently. You also have offspring there. Did it dawn on you that Mikey wasn't present?" "I presumed he accompanied you." "Hold on, and his current location?" "You perceive correct. You're an inattentive wife when preoccupied, but evidently you're equally neglectful as a mother." She struck me. I caressed my cheek and departed from the kitchen. Boyd paused. "My apologies." I persisted in my stride and left via the main entrance. As I proceeded through the lawn to my neighbor's residence, who was supervising Mikey, she kept calling out to me. He was dozing in the playpen she set up for her infant in the sitting area, and didn't flinch as I transferred him to my abode. Alicia was silent, reaching out, pleading for Mikey. "It's unjust. You ought to have apprised me. He's at the neighbor's. I could have cherished moments with him before his awakening." "Precisely, it's unjust. Indeed, we have a minor complication that you didn't notify me of your arrival." I was irate with you, and that were inconsiderate to me during my call to your program. This situation is disparate. Just abstain from contacting my program. I detest surprises, and we should invariably concur we must act as spouses. She fabricated. "Boyd, I'm not overseeing this matter. Time will reveal." But I retired to bed. "Ever acquainted with James Anderson?" Dana queried the following day as she detained me in the parking area while I was en route to my automobile post-show. I sensed I was amidst deep throat with Woodward and Bernstein. "No, but is it necessary that I should?" I answered. "He's the premier behavioral analyst nationwide, engaged in nearly all eminent jury trials in recent years, and my informant disclosed David Bridges recently recruited him as a jury advisor, and the implication." "What's the purpose of your spouse then?" "What's your aim, Dana? Honestly, are you endeavoring to sow discord between my spouse and me?" She shrugged and stated, "Merely posing inquiries, Boyd." "It's precisely my vocation." "Then pose them to another and feature it in your report." I unlocked the vehicle door, entered and forcefully closed it. The jolt struck my shoulder, eliciting a cry of discomfort. "Simply splendid," she snickered and gestured as I departed. In the rear view, but I glimpsed glinting skin, toned hosiery. At 6, I served Mikey his meal and assembled a sandwich for myself from the remaining roast, which was exceptionally savory. Alicia was delayed again, and yet again I got no message or call. An hour afterward, she accessed the domicile via the garage entry. "Apologies, I was engaged and couldn't make contact." "When were you preoccupied?" I probed. "What are you implying?" "I'm suggesting you weren't literally restrained, were you? You were at a consultation with fellow attorneys or perusing some legal text. At any juncture in these events, you could have utilized your phone and messaged me." "Boyd, I'm regretful, but expressing regret won't suffice this instance." "Alicia, you ought to devote moments with your child before his bedtime." I exited to my private space in the basement. I anticipated her arrival with little Mikey, but it never occurred. This disheartened me as I was eager and anticipating a dispute during the game's intermission. I made my way to the kitchen for a water bottle. In truth, I was surveying my spouse. She was indulging in frozen dessert and scanning something on her electronic device when she became aware of my presence. "We must converse about this, Boyd. There's no subject for discussion. You've resumed work and once more plunged into your prior troubles. Damnation, if you're not betraying me, you were meant to be solely focused on jury selection preparation." She averted her eyes and, for the first time, did not dispute the claim that she was exaggerating her level of engagement. I continued, "Well, that settles it. I refuse to be overshadowed by your profession any longer. I'll amend my divorce papers and refile them within the week. Boyd, we're not getting a divorce. I reassert to you, circumstances have changed. Just 2 days back at work and you're already late and not calling. It's like an echo of the past. This is merely the beginning. You'll see improvements. I have a backlog to address for the firm." "Catch up on what?" You were meant to be advising them on jury selection. You don't understand, Boyd, there's a lot at stake here. All right, fine, I turned and left. She rushed to me and rested her hand on my chest. I promise you, it won't be the same. Prove it to me. She hugged me and started to cry profusely. I decided to give her another chance. This lasted for 3 days. It was a beautiful Sunday morning, and I was playing hide and seek with Mikey when she walked in. I have to head to the office for a couple of hours. I'll return by midday. What about our usual Sunday church and breakfast? I asked, my voice betraying my disappointment. Let's do lunch instead. We can go to that Mexican place in the botanical garden we like. See you there at 12, I proposed, daring her to be punctual. She pecked Mikey, then me, said her goodbyes, and left. I looked at Mikey and mused, well, pal, what's next for us? He laughed, and our play resumed. Mikey and I sat in the restaurant at noon, where I ordered quesadillas, stuffed, nay, tortillas, and a Sprite to start. Mikey happily nibbled on the tender, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. By 12:30 the server inquired, any word from your party, or shall I get you anything else? Just the check, thanks. The little guy's getting antsy. The place was crowded with other customers waiting. I could tell they were eager for us to vacate. She gave a knowing smile and patted my shoulder. I get it. Fidgety kids. I've got 3 of my own, she left, and then my phone buzzed. I ignored her call, and a text followed, heading there now. Be there in 30, really, Mikey, I sighed, pondering my next move with her. As expected, he offered no advice. I texted back, I'll be gone, turned off my phone, settled the bill, and took Mikey to the car. Time to take a stand. I can't keep letting her play me and walk all over me. She won't make me the same dupe I was before. There's a difference now, Mikey, and with her work schedule, I'm sure I can secure your custody shortly after. I strolled into my kitchen, flung my keys on the counter, and set Mikey down. He scampered off towards the family room where his toys lay, and I trailed behind. The landline rang, but I ignored it. He loves his playpen. And as he reached the family room, he did pull-ups on the edge. So you want to play in your pen, eh? All right, champ, I said, settling him in. The phone rang again. Mum's going to be upset, isn't she? I asked. He giggled and grabbed his talking toy. There's a saying, never stop your adversary while they're making a mistake. Mum keeps slipping up. All I heard from him were the toy's sounds. The cow says moo. Enjoy, pal, I said, then tickled him, making him erupt with giggles. I cracked open a beer, sat next to my son on the couch, and turned my phone back on. Several voicemails from my wife awaited, which I deleted without listening, sure she'd have the same to say in person. There were also urgent messages from Dana Collins, which I likewise disregarded. Half an hour had passed, and I was on my second beer when she entered the kitchen. Her hair was now pulled back into a ponytail, noticeably different from her earlier appearance. I motioned to silence her impending outburst. Mikey's sleeping, I whispered, nodding towards the playpen where he lay quietly. He belongs in his bed, she agreed, picking him up to take him to his room. I then got in the car and headed to the cigar bar, feeling a bit cowardly for dodging the confrontation, but it seemed pointless. My marriage was practically over. Her job had taken precedence over our family life. I was engrossed in a piece about bridges, back turned to the entrance, when her voice broke the silence. You're not hard to find, Boyd. If I were hiding Dana, I wouldn't be here, I retorted as she made her way over. She settled into a leather seat across from me. Tried this one, she asked, extending a cigar. Haven't, though it comes recommended, I answered. Nick, the owner, he tends to suggest them, particularly to women he finds appealing. That's why she had access to the private staff area. Dana lit the cigar, and my eyes inadvertently fell on her bare legs, looking even more enticing. They seemed to glisten, likely moisturized. Pretty transparent, Boyd, she quipped, crossing her legs differently. I drew a breath from my cigar and exhaled forcefully in her direction. What's the agenda, Dana? I'm here to relax, I said. A flicker of sadness crossed her eyes. I've got terrible news. It'll be all over the news by morning, but you should hear it from me, she said, sliding her phone to me with a smirk as I inadvertently peeked down her blouse. The video's ready to play, she added, taking a drag of her cigar and coughing. I couldn't help but chuckle at the video on her phone. It showed my wife and David Bridges in a compromising situation at her workplace. I set the phone down, leaning back. I'm really sorry, Boyd, it's only going to get uglier. Why the apology? You've landed the scoop of the year. Since when do you worry about collateral damage? It's never been this personal, she whispered. I exhaled, fighting back tears, looking away. He moved fast with her. He's been with 2 others from his team, I said, detached, taking another draw. Doesn't matter, I was headed for divorce anyway. Dana's face briefly lit up with this intel, then shifted to a grave expression. She might think this could be her in to comfort you, Dana pondered. Send me that video, I insisted. I can't, Boyd. It's not out yet. Screw your article, I burst out, hand thudding on the table. This is my life we're talking about, I stood up, offering a muted apology to the room with a wave. Fine, she relented with ease. Keep it quiet, she warned, pulling out a bottle of 25-year-old Menon's single malt from her storage. If there was ever a time for it, now was it. I poured us both a good measure and sat back down. Dana took her glass unquestioningly, and I rekindled my cigar. Thanks, she said, sipping the whiskey, her face betraying her dislike. I was shocked at her betrayal. I never thought she'd risk her good name. It's about him, really. He's quite the predator. We'll simply never uncover concrete evidence, no. She's to blame for deciding to become involved with him in his office for that duration. Indeed, this is precisely what she desired. Incidentally, how did you come by this recording? Well, setting up a camera in such a manner is unlawful, so let's assume it wasn't me who installed it, all right? Let's just say it came from an anonymous source and leave it at that. I stated, aware she was probably the informant, but I wasn't going to probe the matter. Certainly, as you recommend, I concurred. I activated my phone to back up the video online, then received a message from Alicia, "We need to talk at home." I scowled and responded, "There's nothing left to discuss, we're done. Feel free to spend your time with Bridges. Brace yourself for the media frenzy tomorrow." I powered down the phone and observed Dana reclining, inhaling deeply from her cigar. The sight of a woman enjoying a cigar has its charm, not as captivating as her legs, but still remarkable, I remarked. "Your wife?" she asked. I nodded, swallowing a mouthful of whiskey. I wished her well for the press encounter she was about to face. She'll think you brought this story to me. I trust you'll refute any claims of me being your undisclosed informant. Tomorrow will be challenging for you, she warned. Yes, I'm aware. In any case, my life's in shambles, so I'll just carry on with my daily routine, chew gum and keep battling, I responded. Got the gumption? You're the one who always raved about those corny 80s films, I teased. They're cult classics, dude, she chuckled back, and after an hour more of light-hearted talk, my cigar was finished. Had I known, I would have brought extras just for the excuse to keep sneaking peeks at her, but it was time to depart. Take care, Boyd, and I was sincere when I expressed my regret. You're a good guy, and you don't merit this mess, sure. We might catch up later, I thought, heading for the hotel. I preferred not to confront my soon-to-be former spouse until absolutely necessary, which I resolved would be the following day. At 6 a.m. I awoke and switched on the news. The broadcast was already in progress, dominating all the channels. I brewed some hotel coffee and showered. I then went shopping for clothing and personal items for my extended hotel stay. Unsure of when I'd return home, I geared up for at least a week's stay. The tepid shower was soothing, despite the lack of pressure, but it was the least of my issues. Post-shower, I turned on my phone, dismissing all messages, and texted Rose, "No live show for me today. Find a replacement or air a recording," she replied. "Caught the news. Truly sorry for you." My phone rang. Predictably, it was Alicia. I ignored the call and cranked up the TV. The anchor declared, breaking news following the Times expose on David Bridges' intimate relationship with his attorney Alia Taylor. A video has emerged. Viewer discretion is advised. The screen showed them in an embrace, his hands on her, but the footage ended there. The co-anchor added, "This footage challenges Governor Bridges' denial of any romantic involvement with his attorney. We've attempted to reach Alicia Taylor for her input, but have yet to hear back." Curious, I sifted through the texts to see my wife's defense. "What are you implying? I haven't spent a night with David. Stop this nonsense and return home," read her initial message. However, the subsequent morning's text told a different story. "It's not true. There's no affair, Boyd. Please, I'm begging you to believe me. This is a fabrication. I love you," she pleaded. It seemed she was tuned into the broadcast because her following text stated, "It was just a kiss, nothing more, and it was an error." I shook my head, typing back, "There's additional footage out there. You've been caught and this is the end for us." She phoned over and over, yet I disconnected each time, turning my attention to the pundits dissecting Bridges and his string of supposed indiscretions. To my surprise, they concentrated more on him than on my soon-to-be former spouse, which actually brought me some relief. I figured the less her name came up, the less mine would as well. I checked my voicemail to find numerous messages from Alicia, with the remainder from media outlets requesting my statement. For a fleeting moment, I toyed with the idea of going on one of the shows, hoping they'd capture my side and then leave me be, but I dismissed it, knowing it wouldn't pan out that way. Silence is often the better part of valor. I did what any deeply wounded husband might: divided our assets, closed our joint credit lines, and collaborated with a lawyer to finalize and file the necessary paperwork. I was seeking full custody since she had abandoned our home. My lawyer felt I had a strong shot at securing at least primary custody given our living situation, and he suggested that proof of her infidelity might help us skip past counseling or waiting periods in the face of irreconcilable differences. It didn't feel good, but I was satisfied to have wrapped up my sham of a marriage. Clearly her career was her priority, not our marriage, and it was obvious she didn't love me enough to remain loyal. Farewell to her. Through my smartphone, I accessed the home security feed and saw her on the couch, holding a sleeping Mikey, crying. I couldn't tell if her tears were for me and our dissolving marriage, or for the upheaval in her beloved career. I was plotting my revenge against Bridges he was already mired in. Public disgrace, and whatever his wife had in store for him had nothing to do with me. I felt the pull to defend my manhood, but eventually recognized the folly in that. He was well protected, and I wouldn't even get close. If I did, I'd likely end up shot or badly injured. I had to leave his fate to karma. Maybe he'd wind up with Alicia after all. The next day was more of the same, except I had to show up for the broadcast. Rose was her usual efficient self, and the office wasn't too noisy, save for the 20 reporters camped outside my building. Slipping in through the secure parking lot, I avoided them and made it to my office unscathed. Boyd A. Your buddy at that time said he wouldn't drop your name in the press if you let him back on air. Really? What's the difference? Having her on air might be even worse. I can't have her on without discussing her piece. How do you not talk about it? It's the headline of the year. It's my show, I decide what to discuss. I snapped, frustrated. Sure, she said with an eye roll. Until the sponsors start complaining about your lack of courage, she was right. Naturally, calls would come in from the network, sometimes even directly from sponsors if they were particularly irate. That's the broadcast business for you. Fine, Dana can come back, but she needs to be on her best behavior. I have a long memory. Trust me, give her the opportunity. And she'll be very nice to you, Boyd chuckled as he walked away. Having Dana on the show is a challenge. I can't steer the conversation, and I certainly can't dictate her journalistic tactics. She'll prod and maneuver around the topic of my wife until I inadvertently give her all the answers I'd prefer to keep to myself. An hour later, I put on my headphones and watched, a smile on my face, as she did the same. The only difference was that when she crossed her legs, the edge of her skirt inched up slightly. But then again, I wasn't the one wearing a skirt. I spotted a notepad before her and questioned, "Is that a set of inquiries you've got there?" She gave a light laugh and replied, "Absolutely not. I wouldn't dream of stepping into your show armed with questions." As Rose cued us with the countdown, Dana added, "Yet, I might just have a bit more insight than you, at least when it comes to our line of work. 3, 2, 1. The opening tune filled the room, and I inhaled deeply. "Good afternoon to all tuning in," I initiated. "I'm your host, Boyd Baxter, and with me in the studio is Dana Collins from The Times." "How's it going, Dana?" "Wonderful, thank you for the invite, Boyd. It's always a delight. So there's the usual turmoil in Congress. Any word on how our esteemed representatives are faring with the budget proposal?" The status quo persisted. Defense proponents pressed for their interests. The extreme right wanted cuts. The extreme left pushed for more funding. And the centrists lobbied for a slice of the budget pie for their pet projects. Agreement was nowhere in sight, and if Congress were likened to a highway, It would be akin to a gridlocked Los Angeles on a particularly bad day. As the adage goes, Dana, the opposite of pro is con, thus the opposite of progress must be Congress. She laughed, letting out an endearing snort. "Oh no, I just snorted on air," she declared, slightly embarrassed. "Next up, I'll have you shooting milk from your nostrils. How are politicians and diapers alike? Both need changing." Often for very much the same reasons, she shook her head, dismissing the humor. "All right, enough with the jokes. Let's take some calls. We have Doug from Springfield on the line. What's your take on today's issues, Doug?" "Hi, Boyd. Big fan of the show. I feel for you about your wife's situation." "Yeah, me too, Boyd. How can we repair our crumbling system? There needs to be a change in that swamp you call Washington, term limits monitoring their wealth before and after office. Maybe once politicians stop heading to Washington for self-enrichment, we'll see some real work done," Dana asked. "Do you think that's likely, Boyd?" "No, it's improbable any lawmaker from either side would back such a move." "Sure, some may voice their support, but they're aware it won't be put to a vote," she agreed and remarked. "People like David Bridges think they're untouchable. They believe they're invincible." I flinched at the mention, but I held my tongue. She pressed on. "They're after power and wealth. They hunger for the validation of their peers, who fall over themselves to agree with them and laud their so-called virtues. They claim high ethical standards, only to be caught in scandalous acts. It's sickening." "Don't hold back. Tell us what you really think," I said with a laugh. "Forgive me if I seem a bit too invested," she softened. "Things stay as they are. My wife's infidelity persists. What can I do but pour funds into her?" And the lawyers, a fleeting smile crossed her face, but she quickly composed herself. "Anyway, on line 6 we've got Annie from Long Island. What's on your mind?" "Annie, oh Boyd, I just love when Miss Collins is on your program. The two of you share such delightful rapport," I laughed. "I'm like a dash of seasoning, Annie." "I get along with just about anyone." Dana rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her grin this time. "Have you got a question for us, dear Annie?" "Indeed, it's quite simple, and it's for Miss Collins. Would you consider motherhood young?" Lady Dana's usual puzzled expression surfaced, and she gestured with her hands in exasperation. "Intriguing question, Annie. Politics and my wife can be quite dull. What's your answer, Dana?" And just so you know, Annie, her cheeks are quite flushed at the moment. "I do love kids," Dana sidestepped, "much like the politicians we were just discussing." Annie piped up, "Well, you should, because Boyd has his sweet son to think about." "All right," I cut in, steering us away from the topic. "We appreciate you, Annie. Thanks for the call. It's time for a commercial break. We'll return shortly." "Oh wow," Dana voiced. "Today's going to be entertaining," I groaned. Rose signaled a double thumbs up, suggesting the show was going well. That might be so, but I wasn't feeling particularly good about it. 3 hours later, I declared, and that's a wrap for today. Stick with us, don't go anywhere. The on-air light dimmed, and I tossed my headphones onto the desk. Dana hung hers neatly on a stand across from me. "Quite the experience," she remarked. "I didn't foresee a scolding from the elderly today, that's certain. But hey, these seniors adore me. I'm quite the hit in their book clubs," she chuckled. "I'm sure they make up your primary listeners. They also read the paper. They'll examine your words and articles closely." Do I want to be a mum, really? What kind of inquiry is that? I chuckled while stowing my notebooks away. "It's a pertinent question, and don't think I didn't notice you dodged it," I said, catching her eye, prompting a frown from her. "I can't picture myself as a mother." "I love kids, really I do. It's just hard to see how they'd fit with my career." She suddenly turned somber, confessing, "God forgive me, I have it all already." "Don't fret over it," I interjected. "But I'll tell you, kids aren't so terrible. I'm off to pick up mine from preschool now, and we'll be playing with toy trucks later." "How do you stay so detached? Your marriage is in shambles, yet you act as if it's just another uneventful Tuesday. What do you expect me to do? Break down in tears? I have duties, a son, a career. I need to stay calm to ensure everything around me remains stable." I keep my cool and press on. "Dana, what else is there for me to do?" "I guess I expected you to show more feeling," she said. I sarcastically retorted, "Feelings are for the weak. I never really believed that," and she saw right through it. She touched my cheek, looking at me with concern. "I'm sorry, Dana, I've got to head to the preschool now, but thanks for coming on the show again, and remember, call me if you need anything seriously." "Anything," she said, offering a reassuring smile before I left. Life moved on, And a month later, I sat in my lawyer's office, awaiting Alicia's explanation. "Boyd, I'm so sorry, it was a mistake." Alicia began, but I interjected, "Alicia, I don't want to hear it. If you think that your affair soon after we met is the only reason for our split, you're sorely mistaken," I retorted. "Calm down," my attorney warned as I became heated. "Look, yes, your affair alone is grounds enough for a divorce, but you're ignoring that you returned to your old harmful habits as soon as I filed for divorce. You've been unreliable, deceitful, and you've consistently put your job before our family and our son. I can't accept that, and you knew it, which is why you didn't discuss it with me when you took that job." "Boyd, this was meant to be just a consultation," she argued. "I got that, but it's turned out quite differently, hasn't it?" "No, I didn't think so. You're falling back into your old ways. It's like an addiction for you, and to be honest, seeing how quickly you moved on with him, I'm pretty sure this wasn't your first indiscretion. Just sign the papers. I'm being more than fair. I'm asking for primary custody," she said, tears in her eyes. I gave a sardonic smile, and my attorney stepped in. "Ms. Taylor, this proposal is completely off the table for us. There's no chance my client will give up primary custody, and given your demanding job, we're confident the court will agree it's in Michael's best interests and welfare." "Listen, Alicia, my private eye revealed you're clocking in 14-hour shifts every single day and haven't even requested to see Mikey since you left weeks ago. What's the game here? I'm aware you have feelings for me, yet your career takes precedence. You're free to see him whenever I have no intention of standing in your way." "Boyd, I do love you. I really do," she claimed, all the while misleading me. I left the office and later found out she had gone through with signing the documents. My marriage had come to an official close. Half a year later, Alicia had Mikey for the weekend, and I walked into the cigar lounge. "What's up, Nick?" I greeted as I made my way to the counter. "Boyd, how's it going? Your Monte Cristo No. 2 box just came in. It's in your locker," he informed me. "Appreciate it. Is it busy today?" "Not really, just the usual crowd and an attractive lady who's been here a few times and recently got herself a membership." "Sounds good. See you later." I punched in my code and made my way to the VIP area, greeted by the heavenly scent of cedar and matured tobacco. I acknowledged the familiar faces but didn't catch sight of any stunning women, so I proceeded to my cabinet for my Cuban cigars. "Hey Boyd, it's been a while," Dana called out. I grinned and took out an extra cigar. "Hey Dana, fancy a Cuban today?" I offered as I shut my locker and extended the illicit smoke. "Thanks," she said. "I've been watching you. You're not very subtle," I commented as we settled into a couple of chairs. "I'm not exactly hiding. Plus you've got my numbers," she retorted, a frown forming as she clipped her cigar. She seemed slightly on edge as she retrieved an elegant lighter from her bag and lit the 6 inches of refined tobacco. I let out a laugh and coaxed the ember at my cigar's tip to life. "What's got you so edgy?" "I was thinking of asking you out to dinner," she said hesitantly. "Really?" I chuckled. A woman who flaunts miniskirts, crosses her legs, and clicks her heels to get a rise out of me is nervous about asking me out. "You're quite the enigma." She shook her head. "It's excellent, thank you," I affirmed. "Boyd, I've never really been one for dating, never had the time. Flirting with you was easy. Using allure to get what I want from men and women alike has never been a challenge." I arched an eyebrow, intrigued. I hadn't pegged her for being into women. "Cut it out, you leck. I'm not into women, impressive." She's telepathic, I mused. "Look, I'm delving into someone else's affairs here, and I'd rather not receive scorn for it." "Go on," she exhaled a plume of smoke. "What yes?" I replied. "What yes to dinner?" "Will you come?" she inquired, sincerity in her voice. "What? You think you're not appealing?" I probed. "No, it's not that. As I've mentioned, I'm just not accustomed to dating much." "All right, let's wrap this up and head to that quaint Italian spot across the street later." As we sipped wine on my couch, I queried, "So, have you found the time to date me, or am I merely a fleeting encounter for you?" She giggled. "No, didn't you get the memo?" "I've left the Times." "No, must have slipped my notice. I'm on the small screen now. Remember the program you guest starred on? It features some of our gals and a couple of guys lounging on a sofa." "Ah, yes, I'm fond of that show. It's a real indulgence for us in the press." She chuckled. "I can imagine, though I donned trouser suits twice the past week. Had me reaching for the remote our laughter mingled. Then she inquired, "You're a fan of my legs, right?" Let's not go down that identity crisis road again. You're well aware I admire your legs and my feet?" she queried, pivoting to rest her legs on my thighs. I casually set the wine aside on the table. "You've opted for denim and socks today, hardly your most glamorous look." I caressed her foot, eliciting a soft groan from her. "Had I known I'd see you, I would have dressed differently. No need, your jeans do wonders for your rear." "But my face, it's not pretty, no, it's what we'd call unsettlingly spooky," she exclaimed. "Sure, but everything's perfect except the face," I teased. She attempted to withdraw her legs, but I kept them in place. "Don't be upset, I'm only teasing. You're quite the catch that's a bit better," she said, taking another sip before asking, "Would it offend you if I suggested we move this to your bedroom?" "No, darling, I wouldn't take offense." She rolled her eyes and chided. "You're spoiling the atmosphere, Mr. Funnyman. Then I guess I'll have to make amends. Shall we?" I escorted her to my bedroom, and she excused herself to the restroom. Seizing the moment, I rummaged through the desk drawer for protection. Back in the softly lit bedroom, I reclined on the bed, my anticipation palpable, awaiting the moment the stunning reporter would rejoin me. When the bathroom door opened, she didn't step right in but teasingly extended her bare leg, tracing the doorframe in a tantalizing display. "Damn," I uttered, consumed by desire. She circled the doorframe like a dancer and entered the room in her natural state. Her ample bosom stood proudly, her freckles a constellation inviting my gaze. "Do you like what you see?" she asked. "Absolutely, come over here." Before she could settle on the bed, our lips met, our tongues intertwined, flavored with wine. My hand explored her toned backside. "God, this could become a habit," she declared, collapsing into the pillows, her hair fanning out. I kissed her brow and posed the question, "Do you want this? What do you mean? Are you ready for this to become habitual? I'm reviewing girlfriend applications and you're the sole applicant." She ran her fingers over my chest and answered, "I'd like that a lot. I've got more time on my hands now. If you're thinking long-term, I'm open to the idea of motherhood." "Okay," I said, "but let's start with you trying out the stepmom role." "All right," I laughed, and she playfully swatted my chest. "I'm not the cheating type," she whispered. "Neither am I assured her, kissing her forehead. "And Dana, I think I've found someone who values family over career. Time will reveal the truth, but the thrill lies in the unknown. After all, predictability would strip life of its zest." Keep following our channel so your significant other won't wander, and stay tuned for our next story, which promises to eclipse this one. If you're under 18, think carefully before tuning into the next episode. What did you make of our story today? I found it refreshingly unique. It's not often we get such a narrative curveball. What about you? Post your thoughts below. See you in the next videos.